You're watching the UK Tonight. There's more international news coming up after our programme in the world. That's at 9 o'clock. But our main story this evening, a man who killed his ex-girlfriend, her mother and her sister, has been told that he will die in prison. Kyle Clifford was given a whole life order for the murders of Carol, Hannah and Louise Hunt, just days after Louise broke up with him. Today, a judge called him a jealous man soaked in self-pity who holds women in utter contempt. And in his victim impact statement, the girl's father, the racing commentator John Hunt, told Clifford the red carpet will be rolled out for him in hell. Our crime correspondent Martin Brunt has this report.
At 26, Kyle Clifford has a long life ahead of him. All of it will be spent in prison with no chance of parole. And here's why.
The evidence I have heard shows you to be a jealous man, soaked in self-pity, a man who holds women in utter contempt. This is no occasion to subject the family and friends of your victims to any delay or suspense. I therefore make clear at once that for each of these three murders, the sentence will be one of life imprisonment with a whole life order. That means a sentence from which you will never be released.
Clifford had been dumped by his girlfriend, Louise Hunt, a dog groomer. Angry at the rejection, he hatched a plan of revenge. 2 weeks later, his own dashcam recorded him arriving at her home. He had a butchery knife with him and a crossbow, murder weapons he bought on the internet. In an afternoon of bloodshed, he murdered Louise, her sister Hannah and their mother Carol. In court, John Hunt said he'd lost 3/4 of his family to Clifford, a psychopath who'd deceived them all. In an impact statement he read out, he said, "Just remember one thing, whatever misery lies ahead for you, on your dying day there will be no release for you. The screams of hell, I can hear them now when they roll the red carpet out for you. Your miserable fate will last for eternity." Mr. Hunt praised the courage of his daughter Hannah, who, even as she lay dying, managed to call police to the house. He believes that Clifford had planned to wait there for his return and kill him too. His surviving daughter Amy said, "You ensured that my family endured their last moments alone and terrified. I always hoped that I'd be there to hold my mum's hand as she passed away. I only wish it had been me instead of them." Clifford, a former soldier, fled the murder scene with the crossbow under a blanket. He was caught and arrested the next day as he tried to kill himself. He refused to go to court to hear his sentence.
Today's sentence sends a message to men who perpetrate serious acts of violence against women. You will be held accountable and you will face the full force of the law. You can run, but you cannot hide from justice.
The Hunt family and the judge said they hoped everything that had been said about Clifford would eventually be relayed to him in his prison cell. Martin Brunt, Sky News, Cambridge Crown Court.
The judge who sentenced Clifford today paid tribute to the astonishing dignity and courage of the Hunt family after John Hunt and his surviving daughter Amy both read out their victim impact statements in court. I wanted to bring you some more of what John Hunt said today, which he directed at Kyle Clifford, even though Clifford refused to come to court to be sentenced. John said this: "I'm so proud of all my girls. Unlike you, Kyle, at every step of their lives, they made the correct choices to improve themselves as people. Louise enjoyed more success and fulfilment in one morning than you achieved in your entire miserable life. The only Christmas you spent together was at our house. Was it 4 or 5 days you spent with us? The food, the games, the laughter, the normality. What was it about that blissful existence you hated so much, Kyle?" John went on to say, "The impact of what you have done will be taken to my grave. But on the way there, I want you to know that I stand strong before you today. As you are consigned to a fate far greater than death, I can draw on the love and strength that I still feel from the girls in every moment of every day." Well, this case has been horrifying. Rape and brutal violence, murder, underpinned by misogyny, a hatred of women. And worryingly, all the elements of this case are on the rise. I urge you to read John Hunt's statement in full. It's on our website, along with Amy's. And I want to end with a line from John's statements that struck me, and it's going to resonate with survivors of violence against women and girls and their families. Paying tribute to his daughter, he said this: "I hope women around the world will take Louise's bravery as a shining beacon for their lives. If you feel enough is enough, then it is." Also tonight, the master of the cargo ship, which collided with the tanker in the North Sea yesterday, has been arrested. It comes after the search for a missing crew member of the ship, the Salong, was called off. The vessel is still on fire and has been drifting away from the scene of the collision. Our national correspondent Tom Parminter has this update.
The smouldering wreck of the cargo ship is now in desperate trouble. The Salong had been drifting, then tugboats appear to have been moving it away from the coast. Initially, it was feared it may sink, but experts believe it can be towed to safety. One of the crew was lost at sea after the collision. Its containers that had recently held sodium cyanide were empty at the time of the crash. It's now become a criminal investigation. The ship's master, a 59-year-old man, is being questioned by Humberside police on suspicion of gross negligence manslaughter. With shipping still restricted from ports in the Humber, we went up and flew over the other vessel involved. The Stena Immaculate tanker is also in danger. It's not safe to board. Salvage experts need a full assessment, including how hot parts of the tanker are after the blaze. It had been carrying 220,000 barrels of jet fuel for the US Navy. It was held in 16 cargo tanks. At least one of them was ruptured in the crash.
This tanker is 183 metres long, and that central section has just been caved in. The fire damage that we can see is very severe, and we can't see what has happened under the waterline. What is clear is that this vessel is going to be very difficult to recover.
Everyone who escaped these burning vessels after the collision was taken ashore, apart from one crewman who was lost in the chaos.
Search and rescue operations for the missing sailor continued throughout yesterday, but were called off yesterday evening at the point of which the chances of their survival had unfortunately significantly diminished. Our working assumption is that, very sadly, that the sailor is deceased.
Of the surviving crew members, one told us he was just grateful to be alive. Pollution control measures are all now on standby to protect the marine environment and the nature along this coastline.
There will be a marine response centre set up, probably in Grimsby, I would imagine. But they will be in touch with the salvage organisations, the oil spill response contractors, also be in touch with the owners of the ships or the managers of the ships to find out what they can do. So it's a multi-agency contingency.
But the priority is to make these vessels safe. They're registered in Madeira, Portugal and the United States. So it's an international maritime investigation, but also now a criminal investigation to establish what went so catastrophically wrong. Tom Parminter, Sky News.
Well, we've learned a lot more today. Our national correspondent Tom Parminter has been across this story for us since the beginning. Tom, what are the major details we've learned today?
Yeah, this has moved into new territory today, from a maritime accident on the surface of things yesterday through now to suspicions of criminal wrongdoing. We don't yet know the nationality of the 59-year-old who is in police custody here in Grimsby. The tanker that he hit had been anchored, of course, we should remember, and it is a situation where his vessel, the Salong, was travelling at reasonable pace and didn't really divert, and so it is logical for the police to want to question the skipper, the man in charge of that vessel in the first instance. The German company that owned that vessel, the company called Ernst Russ, who are based in Hamburg, said that the master and our entire team are actively assisting with the investigations, but they would not comment further at this stage. And it could be the case as the police continue their investigations, gathering the evidence, gathering information, that they may want to speak to other members of the crew who were involved in this dramatic collision at sea. And they really need to just try and establish the facts. What evidence can they find? When we flew over the site today, we didn't see any obvious signs of pollution or spill, but we wouldn't necessarily have seen that from the air because aviation fuel is almost transparent, and so you wouldn't expect necessarily to see it. And that part of the equation is still emerging. I think it may take some time for the damage to the environment to become completely apparent, but there is a lot of work going on to minimise that. When we landed at Humberside Airport, we met a crew of German specialists who had just flown in, pollution control experts who are here to start their work tomorrow to do what they can to deploy wherever they need to go, they said, to try to make sure that that is controlled as much as possible. But at the centre of this now is that police investigation, and they will try to establish, was this an accident or was there something more suspicious at play?
Tom, thank you. Tom Parmenter with the latest from Grimsby for us tonight. Now, Manchester United have announced plans to build the biggest stadium in the UK. The new 100,000-seater ground will be built on land next to Old Trafford, with the club hoping to finish construction within 5 years. But with co-owner Sir Jim Ratcliffe admitting only yesterday that United could have gone under by Christmas if it wasn't for cuts he made, there are big questions over how the £2 billion stadium will be paid for. Our sports correspondent Rob Harris has more.
This is Manchester United's mammoth plan to build the country's biggest stadium, to fit 100,000 fans, transforming this entire area by knocking down Old Trafford and leaving behind 115 years of history, but leaving a dilapidated venue, neglected by the Glazers during 2 decades of ownership. But it's been a priority for Sir Jim Ratcliffe since gaining control by buying almost 30% of the club a year ago.
United is the world's favourite football club, and it deserves a stadium befitting of its stature. And I think a really good example is the Eiffel Tower. You go to Paris, you stay in a hotel, you spend money. We have 1 billion people around the world who follow Manchester United, and they will all want to visit this stadium.
But at the same time, United are saying the financial situation is so bad they're having to cut 40% of the club staff, with up to 450 redundancies. In December, apparently, the club was nearly going bust. Now, £2 billion is being spent on a stadium. How do those things marry up?
Well, the way it marries up is our short-term focus is to improve our finances. And then the long-term ambition is to have the best stadium in the world. We're in a transformation phase, and sometimes when you want to make radical changes, you have to take 2 steps back before you can move forward.
Planning for the future while struggling in the present. The team enduring their worst ever Premier League season. Funding this mega project could add to the financial pressures. These are ambitious plans, but costly ones. They're looking to build a stadium and redevelop the whole area, which is why United are searching for government cash. But they'll also need outside investment. Could that come from sovereign wealth funds? The club is already more than £700 million in debt. It seems the bigger and better stadium fans demanded, but they don't want to pay the price with higher ticket prices. The Supporters Trust concerned local fans would be priced out, harming the atmosphere. Can a stadium be built while rebuilding a squad? Do the numbers add up in an ambitious timeline to build all this in 5 years? Rob Harris, Sky News.
Well, do the numbers add up at all? Let's talk about this in a bit more detail now and speak to football finance expert Kieran Maguire. Kieran, good to have you on tonight. I was sat in this chair last night, actually, talking about Sir Jim Ratcliffe, saying there was a real prospect of Manchester United going bust, and then less than 24 hours later, He's announcing a £2 billion stadium. How is this even a possibility?
There are a lot of inconsistencies there, as you rightly point out. I've got Manchester United's accounts here, which at the 31st of December show that Manchester United had £95 million in the bank. So I think that his claims that there was a danger of insolvency, the club being unable to pay the bills, is slightly overstating the issue and is perhaps being used to justify the job losses and the other significant changes we've seen under his ownership. I think looking forwards, the project in terms of the new stadium is an intriguing one. I don't see the problems of getting finance to be significant because Manchester United, as Rob said, is an iconic brand. Lots of people want to be there. I think you also have to, of course, take care of the sensitivities of the local fans. Those people from Whalley Range and from Gorton and Stretford itself who have formed the basis of Manchester United's fan base, which newer fans and perhaps wealthier fans want to benefit from in going forward. So it will be a challenge, but it is something where they can arrange the financing. I don't see that as being too big an issue. And I think there'll be a variety of people coming forwards to provide funds.
Yeah, for so many people, it just sums up, the crazy place modern football is now. They're awash with money in some respects, but living beyond their means in others. I mean, governing bodies and authorities are trying to tighten up the game, getting tougher on financial fair play, sustainability, making sure owners are fit and proper. In the past 3 years, United has lost, I think it's around £300 million, putting them in danger of breaching Premier League profitability and sustainability rules. But this scenario is allowed. Can you explain that to us? Because when you talk about financing this project, yes, I'm sure there will be people willing to invest, but will there be loans, debt taken on by the club to finance this?
Most certainly. When we take a look at what happened at Spurs, when they moved from White Hart Lane to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, Spurs have taken on around about £700-800 million worth of debt, but it's interest-only loans for a foreseeable future. They don't have to go and pay any capital for another 10 to 15 years. They've borrowed at very low rates. So it's a case of how well you spend that money. If Manchester United end up costing an extra £80 million in interest on these loans, there's no reason why they can't be generating 120 million extra from matchday ticket sales. It will be a multi-function, multi-use stadium. We've seen that at Spurs. They've got 30 non-footballing events approved by the local council. That's almost certainly to be replicated in Manchester. That's added probably another £100 million to Spurs' top line. So you balance things. What's the additional costs and what's the additional revenues? Whilst Manchester United have lost £300 million over the course of the last 3 years, they will point out that some of that's due to COVID, that some of that's due to the significant changes that have taken place. The Glazer family, for example, they put £35 million worth of costs for consultancy when they were actually selling their shares to Jim Ratcliffe through the books of the club. And that's legal, but it's unlikely to be replicated on a regular basis. So I think some of the figures which have been put out by the club have been embellishing the true financial problems of Manchester United, which tend to be not buying good enough players.
Yeah. You mentioned the Spurs stadium there. I've seen this Manchester United project being called the Wembley of the North, but, the comparisons are, with Tottenham are probably more accurate, a model they seem to be trying to replicate. Using that as an example, where has that particular project gone right and where has it gone wrong? If this is being seen as the blueprint, is Tottenham Hotspur's stadium seen as a success? Is it profitable?
The stadium's been a fantastic success. Spurs have tripled the money that they get from ticket sales. They've tripled their commercial income. What we're seeing is that fans are getting to the stadium earlier and staying later. And every minute longer you are in a stadium, that's a potential minute that you're spending money. Spurs have come up with innovations such as having the go-kart track, which is underneath the pitch itself, which can be used 7 days a week, and so on. So I think Spurs have been very good at revenue maximisation. I think where they've not done so well is spending the money in terms of players and also the prices which they are charging to fans, many of whom have felt that they become quite alienated from the actions of the club itself.
Yeah, that is another real concern, isn't it, for fans of Manchester United. Kieran Maguire, finance expert, thank you so much for joining us on the programme tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
So to come on the programme, I'm going to speak to the couple who have been fined £1,500 by the Home Office. This is after they found a stowaway in their motorhome. A British couple who called the police after finding a stowaway migrant clinging to their motorhome have been fined £1,500 by the Home Office. Joanne and Adrian Fenton from Essex found the man zipped inside the bike rack on the back of their vehicle. They had just arrived home from a holiday in France back in October. Well, a couple of months later, the Fentons received the fine, which said they had failed to check that no clandestine entrant was concealed in their vehicle. Well, there you see the video footage of the migrant being detained by police after Joanne and Adrian made that phone call. I'm pleased to say that they join me now. Good evening to you.
Hi,
Good evening.
Well, it's quite dramatic footage that was filmed of this migrant being taken out of the bike rack on the back of your motorhome. You just arrived back in Essex from a holiday with friends to France. Did you have any idea that something unusual was going on your journey home?
Nothing.
No, absolutely not. No, definitely not.
So tell me how you discovered him.
Well, we were late coming back and we would normally park in a compound. So because of the timings, we decided to park on our driveway. And I said to Joe when we pulled up, I said, if you clear some of the bits inside, I'll get the bikes off the back just to put them in the garage, backed up to the garage. And as I walked around to the rear of the vehicle and I've just lifted up the canvas cover and I saw a pair of white trainers there, and you sort of the first thought is, well, they're not my trainers and I didn't leave any trainers there. So you sort of think, well, and then suddenly they start moving, you lift the cover up, you see a pair of legs and you look up and there's someone under there. So absolute shocked to find someone there. I immediately ran round the side and shouted to Joe to call the police. And that's when Joe called the police, and we asked him to stay under the cover because obviously we didn't know if he was violent, aggressive or on drugs or anything like that. And when Joe had called the police, she came round and gave him a bottle of water. We made sure his welfare, he was okay, but then we just awaited the police, really.
Joe, complete shock that this man had made it from France to Essex in your bike rack. But even in that shocked state, and probably a little bit frightened as well, you knew the right thing to do was to call the police. So a couple of months later, when you got this email from the Home Office, what was your reaction?
Well, what happened really was we'd gone away to Australia in the November to our daughters and son-in-law for Christmas. And whilst we were there, towards the end of November, my husband then received an email from the Home Office explaining that they were going to fine us, and we just had to put our point across. I had to answer all the questions, which is what we done. And we thought, OK, fine. You know, no problem with that. Done that. Had a lovely Christmas, New Year, came home, you know, carried on living our life. And then literally the 23rd of February, all of a sudden through the letterbox came a £1,500 fine from the Home Office.
I'm just going to read you a statement from the Home Office so you can react to it. They said, "We are fully committed to stopping people from illegally entering the country and cracking down on people smugglers, which is why the clandestine entrance civil penalty scheme is there to ensure drivers take every reasonable step to deter irregular migration. We understand that recipients of penalties may disagree with the circumstances of the fine. The option to appeal and trigger a review is made clear in supporting documents." I mean, in that statement, they talk about illegal migrants, people smugglers, and then people who simply don't check their vehicle when they get on a ferry. I mean, what's your reaction to that statement?
I don't agree with this statement straight away anyway. Well, I mean, obviously, we're not people smugglers to start with. And we done everything reasonably practical to check our vehicle. When we left our last destination, which was the Carrefour, we walked round, we checked the vehicle's fully alarmed. So, as far as I'm concerned, we've done everything that's reasonably practical to check the vehicle.
Yeah, because they say, look, subsequently receiving a fine from the Home Office is for failing to check that no clandestine entrant was concealed in your motorhome. Presumably, you know, from what you've said there, you did check. So how can you prove that to the Home Office? Because obviously he was in there, so they'll end up saying we didn't check properly, maybe.
That's right. Well, they'll just say we didn't check properly, and they'll still fine us whatever. You know, they're trying to do this to stop it, and we get that. They're saying we're negligent. We get that. But, you know, we're holiday makers. You know, the lorry drivers, they use infrared, they do... Why can't they do that with all the holiday makers? You know, with motorhomes, caravans coming through, you know, through to the shuttle. Why can
you were checked, presumably?
We was checked.
On boarding the ferry from France?
Yeah, Sarah, we went through 2 passport controls, and after we went through the French and the British passport control, a uniformed person got off, walked around our vehicle with me, asked me to get off the vehicle. We walked all the way around the vehicle, and then they asked me to open one of the lockers to double check that the gas bottle was turned off. And personally, they're the professionals, and if they can't spot someone, how are we as holiday makers and tourists supposed to do?
You pass people whose job it is to check vehicles properly for migrants. Listen, you're still appealing this, right?
We've done an objection to liability, not an appeal. So that's the first stage. And we've had a response back Saturday, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Monday.
Monday morning, yesterday morning.
Well, listen, let us know how you get on, because I know that since you put your story out there, the public reaction to this has been one of outrage. A lot of people feeling like you do, you know, you're just holiday makers going about your business, and there are professionals there to to check vehicles when leaving France or the UK in either direction on that journey. Let us know how you get on. Adrian and Joanne, thank you so much for sharing your story with us on the UK Tonight. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
No, thank you very much.
As to come on the programme, we'll have the sports shock results on day one of the Cheltenham Festival. Details on the way.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling. War, unrest, revolutions.
It's not his country, it's ours.
They have succeeded for the first time in their country's history in removing a leader from power.
No freedom! Sky News, the full story first.
There was fighting here, but there's clearly now a lull, and they're using it to bring up more ammunition.
This is a mass exodus in which Russia is hemorrhaging some of its brightest and its best. According to the local weather channel, there have been more than 2,500 lightning strikes and flash flooding, all on top of this week's lethal tornado. What stays with you most in this job is some of the people you meet. What is your worst fear about what the Russians want to do to the children?
They're just boosting demographics by stealing young people.
Would you like to take the opportunity, Mr. President, on Sky News to invite Barack Obama to come here? Mr. Trump, are you running for president? Can you confirm it?
We're going to take a look, a very serious look.
On that day, we saw your fighters killing women, killing children. Was that a mistake? Did you go too far? You couldn't control your fighters? The full force of the state is being used to crush any protest. Free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
Another alarm. The mood here is jittery and nervous.
We're seeing the world get more and more divided, and it's our job to try to make sense of it all.
Exclusively on Peacock. 2 teams, 1 city, everything on the line.
Gloves off, let them rip into each other again.
Arsenal.
Oh, that's a brilliant strike!
Victory can keep their title hopes alive.
Arsenal flying!
But Chelsea need all 3 points in their own chase for top 4.
Who else?
This is the Premier League. Streaming on Peacock.
Hello, welcome back. David Garrido is here with the sport. And, of course, it's Cheltenham this week. That's why the weather's turned. It's always cold at Cheltenham. Day one of the festival. Yeah. And there's already been a huge shock.
Yeah, big shock. 55,000 people in attendance today. And some would have been really stunned by what they saw. Not just one, but 2 of the big names found. In fact, the last 2 victors of the champion hurdle. But thankful to say that both horses and jockeys on board galloped away unscathed. In fact, let's just show you the drama as it unfolded. So Constitution Hill, 2023 champion, 2-1 on favourite, heavily backed, headed into this race unbeaten from 10 starts. And there goes Nicky de Boinville at the 5th hurdle, so relatively early on in this race. And then State Man looked set to battle it out with brighter days ahead up the hill, but Paul Townend unseated at the last. So at a crucial stage of the race, and then Golden Ace took advantage, trained by Jeremy Scott, with Lorcan Williams on board, 25-1 winner, 9 lengths clear of Burdett Road, 66-1. And actually, it's interesting that, you know, I mentioned it's whenever a horse goes down, whenever jockeys go down, especially when it's a bit of a crunching
not nice
fall.
to see.
It's not nice to see, but both of them, in terms of both jockeys and horses, were fine. But because Constitution Hill was so heavily backed, and as an odds-on favourite, that fall has saved the bookies around £10 million because people tend to back the favourite at Cheltenham. But in any case, that's what happened in the horse racing today.
Well,
3 more days.
By the way, it was just like being there.
Thank you very much. Let's see how I can do with the football tonight.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
I remember when I first went on trial at under 9, I just couldn't concentrate. There'd be like
games going on and I'd be looking over there. Or I just went off and played club football for a while, went back at under 11s, under 12s. And yeah, I had a lot of ups and downs. There was times where I was 16, you know, when you want to go out and stuff like that. And that's when you truly have to make sacrifices that I found it really difficult. Once I got my feet on the ground and worked hard, then yeah, the journey through the youth team was much easier.
You spent time on loan at Weston-super-Mare. Did the progression from there always seem straightforward?
I always take things, you know, day by day and not look too far ahead. So I was just focusing on progressing and just trying to cement myself in the first team because I didn't see myself as a first-team player then. Yeah, I was just trying to focus on playing, you know, a lot of games and improving and then see where.
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Time for a quick look at the weather before we go.
The ideal atmosphere, whatever the altitude. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
The rest of the week is looking rather cold, with overnight frost becoming more widespread by the weekend. Many places dry this evening, if rather breezy, and there'll be a scattering of showers, mostly affecting the north and east, with snow on the Scottish mountains. Showers are going to move further south overnight, with more showers following into northeast Britain later. Expect some hill snow there. It's going to be cold with a patchy frost leading to some icy stretches. Tomorrow morning, sunny spells, but southern and eastern parts can expect showers.
The perfect climate, whatever the forecast. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
That's all from the UK tonight. We are back tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. Up next, it's The Worlds with Yalda Hakim. We'll see you tomorrow.